Okay, we are now come to week 13, which is auditory masking chapter. So this is your last CD for this session, and what I have done is chapter 13 and 14 combined, and there's a little bit more to be done in chapter 14 that we will give you live lecture on that. So this is your last CD. Okay, this auditory masking is what we are going to look at first. In order to do auditory masking, we first have to understand the model of the ear, how the ear is modeled, just basic understanding, and then from that I will develop the auditory masking principle, and then I will explain to you how do you do audio coding. So just to give a little bit of background to the anatomy of the ear and how the ear acts as a spectrum analyzer. Okay, the ear is divided into three sections, as you all know, which is the outer ear, middle ear, and the inner ear. The outer ear is terminated by the eardrum, as you all know, which is sometimes called tympanic membrane. So the sound waves entering the outer ear and goes to the auditory canal, and then it's directed to the eardrum. So the sound entering here, going through the canal, and it lets the tympanic membrane to vibrate. Okay, that's the middle ear is what the tympanic membrane is. So the next slide actually shows you the diagram. So if you look at the diagram, this is very clear. Here is the outer ear. A sound entering here will go through the auditory canal and goes all the way here, and this is a membrane. Here is the membrane, and the sound hitting this at one particular frequency lets this membrane to move at that frequency. Well, normally it's not a single frequency, it's a multiple of frequencies. But let's just think as a single frequency initially, and then you'll get a better understanding. So this moves when this membrane is moving, and this membrane is connected by three bones. One is called the malleus, incus, and stapes. So the malleus and incus are in kind of that form. So the malleus is like a mallet hitting it when the waveform, if this is oscillating at 1 kilohertz, it will be hitting at 1 kilohertz. If the intensity in the ear canal is very high, then the malleus won't be hitting it, it will kind of rotate this. That's how it gets the attenuation. Otherwise, you will break the eardrum easily. So the nature has done all this very well, and so the signal entry here is transmitted through these bones to stapes. So I'll draw that in the next diagram. So think outer ear, middle ear. This is your inner ear. Inner ear is like a snail shape. I'll explain that in a minute. Okay. So basically, if you go through these three, so any vibrations are transmitted by the middle ear to the inner ear. So through this bone. So here is the membrane, and membrane is connected to this bone, and that's connected to what we call the stapes. This is the cochlea, or the inner ear. So any movement here is making this to move both directions. So this is called the stapes. And then again I'll explain to you how the inner ear works in a minute. And if you look at the inner ear, which is called the cochlea, which is about a spiral shape of 2 3/4 turns, and if you unroll that, so it's like a spiral shape. If you unroll that, it will be about 3.5 centimeters. So it's about 3.5 centimeters, and it consists of three fluid filled sections in the cochlea, and these sections I'll show you in the next slide. So if you take a cross-section of this cochlea, and if you look at it, it has got two areas. Here is one area, it's liquid. Here is another area, it's liquid. and here is the membrane. The inner ear, when you uncoil them, and if you take a section of it, this is what you see. So it has got, if you uncoil them, this is all, it's like a kind of a box. This is a membrane, frequency sensitive membrane. This is the piston, which we call the stay-piece, and here is also slow membrane. There's a hole here. So when this piston moves in this direction, and you're setting up a wave here, because this is all fluid here, there and here, and this is a frequency sensitive membrane, so it depends on the frequency, and at that position it will oscillate at 22 kilohertz, and this position is sensitive to 50 hertz. So imagine if these are frequency sensitive membrane, and if this piston is moving at 1 kilohertz, you will find at somewhere there, this will give you a peak. So let me explain that. So this part is here, and this part is here, and this membrane is what I drew here. On top of the membrane is sitting here in the fluid, and you've got hair cells here. They're picking up the movement of the membrane and sending to the brain. So that's how the information is transferred. Okay. So what we are interested is not the actual full anatomy of it. What we are interested is this frequency sensitive membrane, how we can model. From that model, how do we actually model the whole inner ear? But I'm not going to go through the detail of the modeling, but just give you a slight insight to it, okay? So the two liquids we call is scala vestibuli is connected to the stay-piece, and scala tympani, that's the fluid in the bottom, is connected to the round window, which I show in the next slide. So running the full length of the cochlea is called the basilar membrane, which is a frequency sensitive membrane, which separates the cochlear duct from the two liquids. There's another membrane called Reissner membrane. It's a very small, thin membrane. So the effect of that membrane is negligible, people have found. So we don't really normally worry about that Reissner membrane. What you are really keen is basilar membrane. That's what you are after, which is a frequency sensitive membrane. The membrane will oscillate, depends on the frequency coming inside. So let's look at the next slide. This is actually what we need to understand. Here is it. I have taken the cochlea, which is 2 3/4 coil shape. Now I uncoil them. When I uncoil them, this is your system looks like. Here is the auditory canal, signal coming in, getting this membrane to vibrate. That vibration is transmitted through this malleus, and that's transmitted through incus, and that's transmitted through this window, oval window, which is where stay-piece is. So this is moving up and down. If this is a frequency of 1 kilohertz, this is also moving at 1 kilohertz. So you're setting up a fluid, a waveform here at 1 kilohertz, and that waveform, the pressure has to be balanced through this hole, and then if you push the fluid that way, it will pull this back, and when you go this way, and this goes this way. So that's how you set up the waveform. Now, if you look at this membrane, as I said to you, that point is sensitive to 20 kilohertz. That point is sensitive to 50 hertz. So this particular membrane is not a single line. If you look from this end, it looks like this way. It's very short here, and it's very wide here. The length of this, as I said to you, from there to there is what? 3.5 centimeter. And it has got the width here, and the width increases as it go along. So shorter the width, the higher the frequency, and the higher, or if this higher width, that's about 0.015 centimeter, the lower the frequency. So what we can say is this membrane has got, on top of the membrane, sitting there, it's about 30,000 hair cells. they are picking up the membrane's displacement. Okay. So how does this membrane look like if you send a signal? What has happened? So we normally, when we are analyzing this membrane, we'll take a small section of the membrane and model them as a digital filter, because we are saying that point is oscillating. Oscillating means a resonance. Resonance means a second order digital filter. So we could say all this membrane can be represented by many filters, okay, which is basically what the inner ear does. Is it does a frequency analysis, or it's a spectrum analyzer. Inner ear is a spectrum analyzer. It's analyzing the frequency coming in by giving movement depends on the frequency entry, okay. And Bekesi is the person who actually measured these movement and the vibration, and he looked through them and he did a measurement, and he found, for example, when you send a particular wave through the inner ear, through the outer ear, through the membrane, and to inner ear, the actual membrane, as I said to you, is that width, and then it increases. Membrane looks like this. You see, it bends, and that's where it gives the peak and then dies off. That means the hair cells sitting here like this, there are many hair cells sitting there, picking up the information, will pick up this as the maximum deflection. So when it picks up the maximum deflection, it sees that frequency, the brain sees that frequency is available. Okay? So if you've got many frequencies come in, for example, the next slide shows you that. It's the same slide that I have just want to explain this further to you, that I'm saying that the basal end, that's where the signal end starts, basal end is narrow and very stiff. Whereas the apical end, that's this end, apex, it's sensitive for low frequency. So low frequency will cause vibration here, high frequency will cause vibration here. Okay. So this is just another simple example where you can see that I've just drawn a kind of simulated waveform, and if you look from here and you're only tracking the maximum, and if a signal entering here, two frequencies coming in here combined, one is 5000 hertz, one is 800 hertz. When they pass through this, the 5000 hertz is sensitive at that point of the membrane, whereas 800 hertz is sensitive at that point. So you will find there's very little movement here on the membrane, and you get a peak then there, and then very little movement on the membrane, and then it's peak there, and then very little movement. So basically it says, depends on the frequency coming in, the membrane will move and give a maximum deflection, right? So basically, what can you say here? You could say, right, I can actually analyze this or model them as many filters. I can say filter 1, filter 2, filter 3, and filter 4, and filter 5, and many filters cascaded. So I could say I have got a frequency of 20 kilohertz at this end, and 50 hertz at that end. In that range, I can divide them into equal number spacing, and I could have 128 filters. I could now model my basilar membrane, which is the inner ear, which analyzes the frequency, as cascades of many digital filters, and the output of the filters, I catch them at the center somewhere, is the actual deflection, which is the voltage that the brain receives. Okay, and it's then converted into neural pulses, which I used to do before for other classes, but I think I'll leave it here. I won't go into too much detail of this. We can spend a lot of time on actual auditory modeling, how the auditory works. But for you at the moment, what you need to know is an inner ear is represented by many filters, and each filter is each filter is a resonating filter, and they will resonate and depends on the frequency that you set up. These points correspond to the frequencies on the membrane. So from now onwards, I could say an inner ear can be modeled by a transmission line type model, where a signal entering here in the outer ear, going it through the middle ear. Middle ear looks like a very deep bandpass filter. That's what the middle ear looks like. It's a bandpass filter really. And the output then goes into filter 1. Filter 1 is the basal end filter 1, is tuned to 22 kilohertz. And the output of that goes to the filter 2. Filter 2 is tuned to maybe 20 hertz. And this is filter I. Let's say it's tuned to 2 kilohertz. I'm just saying an example. And then the last filter that you have is tuned to, say, apical end filter at 50 hertz. It's normal in modeling that we normally have digital filter model of the basilar membrane. We normally use 128 filters to model it. This is called a one-dimensional transmission line model. And the output of the filter is two types. One is the pressure output, going from one end to the next as you go along. Second one is the deflection. The membrane moves up and down. The deflection is now picked up by a hair cell sitting there. And it converts the displacement into an electrical signal. So you can see this is pressure, isn't that right? In the membrane here, in the ear canal, sound wave entering as a pressure to the membrane inside, which is called the eardrum. So pressure is applied to the eardrum, and the pressure is converted through these filters, or the basilar membrane, as membrane displacement. So a pressure is converted into displacement. Now displacement is converted into voltage. So that's what happened actually in the inner ear. So cascaded filters are what you need. They are all second order resonant filter. You know what the second order filter is. Second order resonant filter will look like normally 1 plus A1 set to the minus 1 plus A2 set to the minus 2 divided by 1 plus B1 set to the minus 1 plus B2 set to the minus 2. If you actually plot the frequency response of these filters, you will find both of them are resonating. This is a 0, this is 0. That's pole. That's the one which causes the deflection. So if you plot them, the frequency response will look like, if for the pole it will be like that. That's the resonance part. And for 0, probably it will go down and go like this. And that's a 0. So as you go along, if you cascade all of these, you'll have got a lot of peak, and these ones will be, eventually will decrease, like, you know. But what you are interested in that part, that's the part you are interested in, the energy in that area. This one is that part, feeding to the next one. I wouldn't go into too much of detail at the moment. If you are interested in modeling the cochlea further, there are lots of papers available. You can have a look at it. Now, transmission line model is very, very difficult to implement. Well, when I say very, very difficult, it's computationally inefficient, because you have to calculate the first filter output, then feed it to the next one, and then next one and next one. If you go back again, and just for a second, see, you have to find the output of that. So you have to make sure what's the output here, and that has to be fed there before you calculate this, and that has to be fed. So if you have got 128, it has got a massive delay. So you give a signal here, and whatever the group delay of the filter is going to be responsible, multiply by 128 group delay before the signal comes here. So in a real system, in a human auditory system, when a signal enters into the eardrum, it takes about 10 milliseconds to travel through the filters to the last filter. From here to there is 10 millisecond travel. But when you implement in real time using a filter, it's It's impossible to achieve 10 milliseconds. It is very, very difficult to achieve many filters. We are talking about 30,000 hair cell picking up. It's an analog system, and 10 milliseconds is pretty fast. But if you convert in a digital system, in a real-time implementation of this analog system, is very, very difficult. So people spend a lot of time and say, oh, we really don't need a transmission line model. The nature has designed an analog system as a transmission line model, whereas we can approximate this as a parallel model. That means each of these filters, we know the function of these filters, selecting a frequency, selecting a frequency, selecting a frequency. So what we think is, we go for parallel model. Is similar to your mini project that you have done, where we have the input here coming in, is being fed to all these filters. I haven't drawn that, so you should make a note on your diagram. And this is filter 1. What's the characteristic of filter 1? Is tuned at, say, for example, 50 Hertz. So we will say this filter is a band pass filter tuned at 50 Hertz. Then this filter is band pass filter tuned at 100 Hertz. Next filter tuned at 200 Hertz. And so on, so on. You can have as many filters you want, as many filters you want. And the last filter is tuned at 20 kilohertz. So how many filters we need? Well, we thought we do need about some 200, 500 filters to represent these auditory models. And they look like a parallel filter. Having said that, psychoacoustic experiments tells you that you do not need that many fine filters. It says each filter has got a large bandwidth. Altogether, 24 filters, but we call them as critical band filters. Critical band filters are more than enough to really capture the information that's come from a speech or from music. Okay? So people moved from transmission line model to parallel model. That's what we call the parallel model, where we normally have 24 filters. And I think that's what you use in your mini project. And these filters are really this type of overlapping filters. They're called gamma tone filters. Now, I simplified for you in the mini project as a triangular filter. So an approximation of that filter, I made it as a triangular filter for you, like that. That's what the filters I had. So it's exactly how the ear does the filtering. So you are also doing it, but you're doing it with approximation. So you do need to know that the function of the ear is the receiver, whether it's music or whether it's speech. Here is the receiver, one single receiver that you have, can be modeled as a parallel filters or bandpass filters of 24 bandpass filters, which is more than enough for most of the applications. Okay? So we are going to use this as our front end for auditory masking. Okay, before we move on to auditory masking, there are a few things that you need to know. What is the minimum pressure level that you have to have at the eardrum in order to hear the sound? What they call is a whisper. You put your hand there. If you go to the kind of an ENT surgeon and they're testing your hearing, they would use just the hand and they will say a word here, like something like one. And if you can hear that, that means your system, your eardrum and the sensitivity all pretty good. Rather than measurement. I mean, people have nowadays use measurement to measure what is your auditory sensitivity. But those days, they just basically work out a sound, very minimal sound is something you put your hand here and say like very quietly, and whether you can hear. Now, if you work it out in microbars, if this is your minimum pressure level at the eardrum that you can hear, which is 0.0002 microbars. And then what is the maximum that you can loudness or the pressure level that your ear, inner ear inside, sorry, not inner ear, just the eardrum can handle. The eardrum can handle something like very, like the upper, well, yeah, it's about 2,000 microbars. Now 2,000 microbars here is translated into loudness afterwards, but when you reach that level, you will start to hear the pain, you feel pain. So what you immediately would do is you start to close your ear so that the signal that's going in is well below 2,000. So anything around 2,000 is you're reaching the pain. Anything at 0.002 is a very low level. So you want to have a comfortable level, okay? So people say, like in the model I have shown you, these bandpass filters that you have, they're fixed bandpass filter, but in a real ear, it's not fixed bandpass filter. Whenever you have got a low pressure level, this bandpass filter actually gets it tuned to very sharp so that it can pick up that one. Whenever you get a very large one, this bandpass filter just flattens like that so that it will never select the sound. So ear has this adaptive tuning. It just adapts its tuning, depends on the input level. Okay, it measures the input level and the frequency. If it's low, it will then select that one by changing its resonance frequency, resonance bandwidth, right? Anyway, so let's move on. So you can actually calculate what is the maximum sound pressure level in dB you can have, okay? You say dB power is 10 log P output over P input, and in our case P output is worked out as 2,000 microbar, and P input is the minimum input you can have. If you worked out 140 dB, with respect to minimum, the maximum your ear can handle is about 140 dB. Anything above that is threshold of pain. That's called 140 dB sound pressure level, we call it. So just to give you a little bit of understanding, I have given a scale here. If you say threshold of hearing is 0 dB, that is your 0.002 microbar, and say if you are in a countryside at night, it's about 20 dB, very, very quiet, 20 dB. And if you're on a busy street, it's about 80 dB. And you tend to kind of move away from the busy street because you become uncomfortable. Or if you are at a close range of shouting, somebody shouting at you, or child shouting at your ear, you immediately close it because you are reaching above 120-30 dB. And anything loud rock group is about 120 dB is reaching the threshold of pain. And anything gunshot at a close range about 140 dB. So if you want to have a very quiet and a normal conversation, it's between 60 dB to 40 dB, right? So ear actually like works out what the pressure level is and then tunes its the bandpass filter accordingly as well. But so there's a feedback mechanism showing, right, okay, it has tuned it so much, but it can't do any more, threshold of pain you have reached, so you have to do something. So immediately you use something, you either move away from the sound or you just close your ear to cut down your 120 dB to low so that you can just stay where you are when you reach at that level, okay? So this is just to give you an idea, because in auditory masking, these levels are used actually to do calculation of auditory masking. Right, we are now moving to auditory masking. I've given you the background now, so we just go into auditory masking. Okay. Human auditory masking is modeled as the human auditory system is modeled as a filter bank. I have explained to you. And the filter bank center frequency is at a particular frequency. Your mini project, look at a mini project, the center frequencies are not equally spaced. There are many frequency scales available. Mel scales for music, Bekhesi scales for speech, then ER, the equal rectangular bandwidth scale, another one. So there are many frequency scales available, right? Now, normally for music application, you will use music and speech, you will score Bach scale. So it's the center frequency is organized in a log range, right? Logarithmically changing, right? And also the bandwidth, the smaller bandwidth at a low frequency and a large bandwidth at a high frequency. And your filters are set up like that. Now, these filters are called critical band filters, I've told you, and critical band filters are based on a certain particular, they have a particular bandwidth as well. Now, signal components within a critical band. So just take one band. So here's the filter, and this is a filter, that's the bandwidth. Now, this is one critical band filter, one particular filter with the center frequency or whatever center frequency you have, say 2 kilohertz. And that's your bandwidth. Now you're going to say, any signal within a critical band, one signal can mask the other one. There could be many signals here, many bands, many frequencies. Maybe that one will mask all these because that's the one you are hearing. So masking means the highest one, amplitude one can suppress the other one as long as it's in one critical band. Also, the signal on one band can suppress the other bands as well. If this is too high, that will suppress the other filters as well. Remember? That's how the masking works. So this type of masking called intra-band, that means a signal within a critical band masking the other signals within that band is called intra-band masking. And the next one is interband masking. What is interband masking? A sound on one critical band can mask the sounds in a different critical bands. So you can say, here are my filters, there. The sound in this band is very, very high. So if you look at the amplitude here, it's very, very high, for example. This can mask the sounds in here, in this band, in this band, in this band, in this band. They are completely masked. That means these signals you will not hear because this is actually masking that signal. So you can't hear that. So that's called masking, frequency masking, or we call it interband masking. It's very hard to understand masking. It's not a simple simple concept. So what we're going to do, we're trying to understand some part of masking, and then we think, how do we use the masking for coding? That's the idea behind why we are doing auditory masking. Is we want to know how a masking is understood, then can we write an equation for masking, and using that equation, can we actually apply that for coding? So there are 25 critical bands in up to 20 kilohertz. And these filters are spaced on a perceptual frequency scale. Those frequency scales have been done by psychoacoustic experiments and asking people to listen to particular frequencies, and people have worked out these critical band filters, what are the center frequencies? They were very keen to find out. So they used to give a particular frequency with the noise in it, and increasing the noise bandwidth, they worked out what is the bandwidth of that filter and what is it sensitive to. So these filters have got a particular scale. So you may have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, many filters, but these are not equally spaced. They are in a particular frequency scale. So we can actually have a relationship between the normal frequency in hertz and also in Bach. Bach is a frequency scale. So people have developed equation between mapping between normal frequency hertz to Bach frequency. Bach is the perceptual scale. Normal hertz is the normal frequency is the hertz, and we can have a mapping between. So here's an equation that if you want to work out what's Bach and what's in frequency. So if anything below 1.5 kilohertz, you use that equation. Anything above 1 point, you use this equation. So if you plot it, they are not linear. You can see frequency in hertz and frequency in Bach are here. And you can see when you reach that frequency region, and there's not much movement here. So they're all compressed here. Whereas on a low range, they're like linear, and then they follow a log. Okay? So that's the scale you used to use. So if you are working on frequency, you could have equal frequency here, and then it'll give you non-equal frequency in Bach scale. Or you can have equal Bach scale here, and it'll give you non-equal frequencies here. Okay, so you could say, right, I'm going to have equal Bach scales. You say, this is my equal Bach length. And you work out the frequency. Frequencies won't be equal. They won't be, the distance between them won't be equal because they follow this log curve. Okay. So the critical bandwidth increases. They always increase, and reaching approximately 700 hertz at 4 kilohertz bandwidth. We can talk about critical band frequencies bandwidth in terms of Q. Remember, we looked at on the time frequency analysis, we looked at Q, quality factor, and you can say it's between 5 and 6. So this particular table gives you some idea of what are critical bands. Critical band is in Bach scale, Bach 1, Bach 2, Bach 3, and so on, Bach 25. 25 Bachs. And then you go and work out using that formula, what are the center frequencies? One Bach gives you 50 hertz, the second Bach gives you 150 hertz, third Bach gives you 250 hertz, and the 10th Bach gives you that, and the 24th Bach gives you that, and the 20, sorry, gives you that, sorry, and then the 25th one gives you something like 22 kilohertz. And if that's the center frequency, this is your upper edge, this is your lower edge, and if you subtract that, you will get your bandwidth. So you can see equal bandwidth, so they're linear for some time, and then they start to change log. Can you see that? And the Q value changes as well, quality factor. So this is just the table. It's a table that you really need to have if you're going to do audio coding or speech coding using transform coding technique. Okay. So we have just drawn an example here, bandwidth against the center frequencies. And you can see the bandwidth is virtually constant for some time, and then start to increase little by little, and when it comes to the higher frequencies, go very fast. The bandwidth increases, like bandwidth is constant roughly, then it increases little by little and moves very fast for that. So that's just showing the bandwidth. If you now plot all these filters using these bandwidths, which you have done in your mini project, your filters they are overlapping filters, and you can see low bandwidth and you can see high bandwidth. So between low and high bandwidth you have. These filters that we have done are called gamma tone filters. They are similar to triangular filters, but triangular is the approximation of a kind of a nice tuned filter. Gamma tone filters are the true critical band filters. They have been measured using the impulse response of the ear by giving a click here and doing the measurement on the inner ear, psychoacoustic experiments, plus people have done that experiments before and worked out the impulse response. From that they worked out the frequency response. Once they know the frequency response, they fitted a curve which is the gamma tone curve, which is basically an equation, right, of an impulse response. So here, this is your impulse response. This is, if you work this out for various frequencies and various center frequency, that will give you impulse response like that. And if you take the Fourier transform of that, you will get these ones. Let's look at human auditory perception now. Human auditory system that we don't perceive. What are when you perceive the sound, what does it actually perceive? We don't perceive frequency. We know we talk about fundamental frequency, we don't talk about frequency. But the human system perceives the pitch. This is a high pitch, low pitch, and the pitch value. It's not the actual frequency itself. We do not perceive level. We don't know what level is coming. We say how loud it is. So human perception system perceives the loudness. It does not perceive spectral shape. We talk about spectrum. It doesn't perceive modulation depth. It doesn't perceive frequency of the modulation. What it perceives is how sharp the signal is, the sharpness, and also you should look at the fluctuation strength and roughness of the signal. It does not perceive time instance of the signal. It perceives the duration of the signal. So the subjective duration is important. So basically, what we learn on a signal is not exactly the human does not measures that. It's from what we learn, the components, frequencies and intensity, it's just being, as far as human perception system is concerned, it's just being converted in another domain and looks at as what's the pitch, how loud is the signal is, what's the duration of the signal, and how the fluctuation changes, not actual spectrum. So from all these spectral analysis, it gathers all the information to perceive about a sound. So basically, that we can say the human auditory system, when it perceives three things very, very clearly. One is the loudness is very important. Then what we call the critical band rate. And third one is the time, which is the duration. So the resulting three-dimensional pattern, and based on that three-dimensional pattern, human auditory system can actually work out what's the sound like. Is it a high-quality sound, or is it a low-quality sound, or poor-quality sound? So the human auditory perception system is extremely good in deciding what sort of sound. But masking plays an important role in human auditory system. Without masking, things can't function. So we want to make sure we understand masking and then cleverly apply the masking for audio coding. This chapter actually leads into audio coding, right? That's the major part of the course. So masking plays an important role in human auditory system. And we want to look at masking. There are two types of masking that you need to know. And, well, there are only two types of masking available. One is called simultaneous masking. Other one is called non-simultaneous masking. What are the difference of those masking, and how do you apply, how to interpret those masking, and then how do you model them? Okay. We have to look at simultaneous masking. An example of a simultaneous masking would be this. You are having a conversation with a person on the road. So you're having one-to-one conversation. And a truck is passing you. When the truck passes you, what happens? If you want to continue the conversation, you have to raise your level. Or, if you don't raise the level, then you allow the truck to pass you, and then you just continue the conversation. So at the time when the truck is passing, truck is trying to mask your normal conversation. That's basically it is. So what we are saying is basically here, conversation is severely disturbed, and in order to continue the conversation successfully, the speaker has to raise his voice to produce more speech power or greater loudness, which is called it. In music, the similar effect starts. What happens is, different instruments in music can actually mask the softer instrument. The louder instrument can mask the softer instrument, and the softer instrument become inaudible. So this is basically one thing masking, a stronger one masking the other one. Okay, that's called simultaneous masking. But we want to look at it in frequency here. At the moment, I've just explained it. Masking is usually kind of described in terms of minimum sound pressure level of a test sound that is audible in the presence of a masker. So if you've got a masker, I'm producing a masker of a tone at the eardrum. So it's at that level. At the same time, I'm producing another sound at a different level. So what's the minimum level? So you just put this one, you hear that, and now you increase this next sound at a different position, maybe frequency position, little by little by little. You may not be hearing. And after the level has increased slightly up there, you are hearing the second sound. That means your second sound is now, this sound actually sets up a masking threshold. Your second sound was below the threshold before, now it's above the threshold, you can hear it. So the stronger signal, we set up a masking threshold across the whole frequency band. And I'll show that in a minute. And then if the second signal is below that, you can't hear it. So I'm showing you some examples of maskers and masking pattern, and you can see that in the next slide, and it shows you the difference between them. Look at here, an example here, right? This is just a threshold level, and they do the masking pattern. How did they do the masking pattern? They just give a frequency here, a very low frequency, and looked at, this is not tuning curves, this is not actual curve, this is actually masking curves. What it shows is when this signal present, the masking curve, this is your threshold of hearing. You know this one, dotted line? It's the threshold of hearing. When there's no signal at your eardrum, nothing, really at the very quiet, pin drop silence, you will find the auditory system is set up at threshold level. What does that mean? A lot of people ask me this, what does this threshold in quiet mean? What does that mean is, if this is your threshold or set up by your auditory system in a normal quiet environment, now you want to hear a sound. If you want to hear this sound, that particular frequency sound, its amplitude has to be above that level if you want to hear it. If you want to hear this sound, that amplitude has to be there. If it's above that, you will hear. If it's below, you won't hear. So once the threshold of hearing is set up, if you want to hear a sound, your amplitude has to be above the threshold of hearing. Okay? So these masking patterns, like these shapes, what happens? You may ask me, how do you get this masking pattern? Look at here. If you just say you gave a, this is your first person, these are the band pass filters, just say equal bandwidth and things like that. Oh, not equal bandwidth, equal height. Now I'm going to give a signal of that for this frequency, this amplitude. I'm going to give a signal of that one of that level, very high level. And I got a signal here as well. And I get a signal here as well, here as well. So you can see what happened is, this signal is going to raise a level. This is its masking level, like that. So these ones won't hear. So this is the green one is what I have for that particular frequency. Similarly, now you give another get rid of that and give another signal here, and work out this masking pattern. And that's the pattern. It's not tuning. It's from this you get this one, and so on. You see? And you convert the frequency into low frequency. What will happen? These are squashed. So the pattern looks different. See, the pattern looks different, masking pattern. The masking pattern looks different. So people were puzzled, you know, how does the system know to have like kind of a, to model all these is so difficult because this is a different function, this is a different function, different function. So when they did the measurement on a box scale, they found, when they converted all these frequency into box scale, do you see here? They found this masking pattern, immaterial of what frequency you are looking at, they look same. Do you see these patterns? These patterns, this shape looks same. So that's how people say, okay, if you are going to do audio coding, you must use box scale because the masking patterns are going to be the same in each band. So then we can use that knowledge to actually do coding. So that's one of the reasons you want to see the masking pattern thing. Okay. Okay. So you can read through all these a bit more in detail and say, like, you know, but what I would show is I'll show you another graph, the next one, with more detail. Yeah, I have explained all of these. You go into the next one. Threshold in quiet, which I have already explained this, but let's go through this one once more. I think sorry, but I go to the next slide. I'm just looking. Oh yeah, here you go. This is the diagram I want. Have a look at here, for example. This actually speaks for itself. We are only talking about trying to calculate one masking threshold, only for one frequency, not for every one of them. And before you had all of this. So at the moment, one. With the frequency I'm interested is 1 kilohertz. Here you go. I'm interested in 1 kilohertz. And now I know this is my threshold of hearing. You see that? So you see that when you are testing a tone, you know, normally in a radio station or somewhere when they test the tone, they don't give a tone of 50 hertz because you need to give a very large, it's not sensitive, like, so the ear is very sensitive to round about 1 to 4 kilohertz. If you give any of these frequencies, small amplitude is enough for you to hear. Ear is not sensitive to 50 hertz. Like if you want to hear 50 hertz, you must raise that amount of level above the masking to hear it. Compared to 2 kilohertz or 3 kilohertz, you only have to give that level to hear. So you can see this threshold of hearing is a kind of a sensitivity curve that ear sets off. That if you want to hear 4 kilohertz or 10 kilohertz, you must give that much of amplitude, otherwise you can't hear it. If you want to hear 20 kilohertz, so you must give that much of amplitude. So these are at the both end of the basilar membrane, that is the stiffness end, that is the basal end and apical end of the basilar membrane, you find ear is not really sensitive. At the middle is very sensitive. You see, very small signals you can hear. Anyway, the idea behind this is we select 2 kilohertz or 1 kilohertz as the center frequency, and we give a frequency, and we vary the frequency amplitude. Here's a 20 dB, 40 dB, 60 dB, 80 dB, 100 dB. You can see the ear sets up a masking threshold. Now, this threshold in quiet now has gone up, as that is its masking threshold set up by the ear for that particular frequency at that amplitude. And you can see the frequency that you are giving at that frequency, any masking curve here, they are parallel. Do you see that? They are parallel here. Whereas on this side, in the high frequency side, it slopes around this way, steeper, and then go less steep like that. And you can see it's trying to mask a lot of frequencies. So if you give a very high amplitude, these frequencies will be masked, because in order to hear this particular frequency, it must be above that amplitude to hear it. So if you want to hear, you must be always above the amplitude. One of the other things you can see here is, another problem is, when you go for very large amplitude of like 80 dB or 100 dB, you see the masking curve has got a kink here. That means it's non-linearity. So you are giving too much of very high amplitude. That means non-linearity is in the inner ear. Like, that's another thing that we haven't learned, is because inner ear is not linear filters, it's the non-linear filters, right? So we can approximate a linear filter. We say it's a low frequency on that end. So what I want you to know is, I have got a masking threshold here. It depends on the amplitude. So we can say masking threshold varies, depends on the input signal strength. We are saying second one. Second one, I'm saying if this is my level I'm giving for at one frequency, and this side it will mask a lot of frequencies, and this side is masked only a few frequencies. You can see that? And if you increase this amplitude, this gets steeper masking threshold, many frequencies will be masked. And that's the way the ear sets up this masking threshold. And exactly what I've said is being explained. You can just read through this yourself, and you'll find at 80 to 70 dB, you are finding this some sort of nonlinearity happening. Okay. And now, so I have explained simultaneous masking, but I haven't explained. All I have said is one frequency when I give the system sets up this masking threshold. Now, what is simultaneous masking? Now, simultaneous masking means you are giving 1, 2, 3, 4, many frequencies simultaneously. So, at the ear, many frequencies are hitting. So, speech signal, all frequencies are hitting at the same time, right? So, when all of them are hitting at the same time, what happens? Which frequency would you hear? Which you don't hear? It's determined by the masking. So, let's look at the next slide. Here is the masking curve for one particular frame or time instant. Now, I've just drawn the threshold of hearing as normal, and I'm giving frequency number 1, frequency number 2, frequency number 3, frequency number 4. Therefore, all frequencies are given simultaneously. That's called simultaneous masking. So, because this is the louder sound, the masking thresholds are set up nicely like that. Right. So you can simply say this signal is below the masking threshold, you won't hear that. This is below the masking threshold, you won't hear it. But this one is above the masking threshold, so you will hear that one and that one, not the other one. So now just start to think. If you can find the equation for these and these ones to masking level, you can find an equation that's in the frequency domain. Remember? So if you have got a signal like that coming in, you take a Fourier transform of it, like, which is same as filtering. So you get all these amplitude there. Then you can apply this masking threshold for every frequency, and you will find that something is below masking threshold, something above. The one below masking threshold, we don't need to worry about. We don't need to code them in a coding. We can just ignore them. So, and you can reconstruct the signal only with the signal that's above the masking threshold. So we have just described the masking by only one masker. If the source of signal comes from many simultaneous maskers, a global masking threshold will be set up. So we just showed one masker and many signals there. You could have another masker in frequency. So they all will set up masking threshold, then you will have a global threshold. That's your masking global threshold for that particular frame. For the next frame of speech or music, it will move up or down, depends on the signal. Right? So we are now into auditory masking. Let's now look at Tahr's auditory masking model. There are many masking models. People have fitted curves for these masking models, masking curves, but we look at one model, and just to give you an idea of how you calculate the global masking threshold. Okay? So this model is based on Tahr's psychoacoustic model, where auditory system is represented by critical band rate scale. And the spectral components within a given critical band can mask the other components. We call them intra-band. I have mentioned that already. The spectral components, they are within one band, can mask the other components in the other critical bands, which is called inter-band masking. So we have to calculate both masking thresholds. What's the masking threshold within the critical band? What's the masking threshold outside the critical band? We can use all this knowledge to get the global masking threshold. So auditory masking model. So Tahr's approximated the masking curve into a straight line. Remember, I said the band pass filter I approximate as a as a triangle. Tahr did the same, and he just showed that one component, that V in Bach, can mask another component set L or set U in another frequency position. So let's look at the diagram. I think that's the best thing. Remember, for one particular tone, if you assume the tone is at that frequency set V, and that's your amplitude level. Depends on the level. Level is L1, L2, L3. I'm saying LV is the level. And as I said to you, these ones are parallel to each other. And Tahr measured this, and he found the slope is 27 dB per Bach. So these are Bach scale, equally distributed scale, equally spaced Bach. And Tahr found these slopes, he approximated them, they get steeper, they get like shallower like that as the level increases. So he set an equation, straight line equation for that in terms of the level. So as the level increases, this slants it that way. And his equation was, the slope for this equation is given by SVH is equal to minus 24 dB, 230 divided by FB is the center frequency you're talking about. High frequency slope, yes, and LV is the level. So this is your slope, that slope or that slope or that slope. And when Tahr worked out, he worked out the equation eventually, and then he said LV is the level of the masker, FB is the masker component, and SVH is the slope. So Tahr's experiment showed that the sound pressure level of a masker is not so important when computing masking effects at a low frequency. So you really don't need to work out the sound pressure level at the ear. As long as you know the level as inside the inner ear, you can work out the masking. But there's a translation between the actual level at the inner ear to what's the sound pressure level. Okay? Thus, low frequency slope SPL of the masking curve is independent of the level. Remember, I showed you that? No matter what level it is, these slopes are equal. So if the spectrum contains n frequency components, so if you take n filters, so n frequency energy they are in each band, similar to your mini project, you calculate energy for each band. Now you got that. From that, you can use Tahr's equation to find the masking threshold. So Tahr says the masking threshold at one particular frequency U is equal to the masking contribution of all the frequencies. If this is your attitude, masking contribution all this side, the masking contribution to this side. So he calculates mask U being masked by a lower frequency mask V is that, a mask U is being by a high frequency this. So these two components are two different components contributing to the overall masking level. That means this level has got effects on all these frequencies and all these frequencies, and Tahr worked out an equation that using these slopes and these slopes, we can actually calculate the overall masking threshold. So apply this equation. What he says is, if you go on to the next line, he says that U is not equal to V in that equation because that means the actual frequency. And we are going to show you an example where N equal to 10 frequency position, and we are going to say U equal to 5 is your mask key. So all the other frequency components will mask this component. The result of mask is being this, okay? So what I'm trying to do is different. I'm saying this is differently now. I'm saying I got 10 components now, change it this way. Here is my first masking threshold. So these are these are the energy of your filters. This one's energy 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so on, 5, 6. And Tahr said, okay, if you know the energy of each band at Bach frequency scale, let's say a frequency component, one particular frequency, which is u equal to 5, and I'm going to call that's the mask key. That's not the masker now, that's the mask key. How this is going to be masked by all the other frequency components? So his point is, okay, this tail, this, if you expand that, that's going to hit this one. So it's going to mask that. It's going to hit this one. It's going to mask that. This is going to hit that one. And these three are going to suppress that. Then he says these high frequencies, these ends are going to hit this one. See? And that one, and that one. So his point is that if this is a frequency component, that will be suppressed by these ones and those ones. So what is the masking level at that point? Due to all these is what his equation shows, Tahr's equation. He calculates the value TH threshold, which might be that at the end, or could be here. If that is the threshold, masking threshold, then this sound you will not hear. If this is the masking threshold, then you will hear that sound. So when you calculate TH for that particular frequency, you know where it's going to be. Similarly, now you repeat the experiment, repeat the thing using this as your mask key, and all these are going to mask, and find out the masking threshold. When you calculate using Tahr's equation, it may end up there. And for that, you calculate it may end up here. For this one, it may end up here. For this one, it may end up here. So I could say my masking threshold is like that. That's my global masking threshold. So this sound is masked, gone. This is okay, I can hear. This is masked, I can hear that. I can't hear that, and so on. That's how you do calculate the masking threshold. Right, next one is, so that's for frequency, simultaneous masking. We have done that. That is a signal being masked by all the other ones. Okay, that's called inter-band masking, between bands. Now we want to look at intra-band masking. We have to calculate that as well. How do you get intra-band masking? So intra-band masking is two ways. Normally this is called as a tone masking the noise, and the second one is a noise could mask the tone. So within a band, if you've got a tone which will mask all the noise there, so you can't hear the noise. Or within a band, if the tone is small but the noise is high, the noise can mask the tone. So you have to use both method to find out the actual masking. You already calculated one masking level, now you have to get this as well, then you need to combine them. So we don't need to go too much into detail, these are all well given. A tone masking the noise is calculated by minus 14.5 plus I. I is to a critical band number. If you say, if your number is 1, it will be minus 15.5. Then noise masking the tone, that's tone, is minus 5.5 dB. That's already been measured and tested. So you have that value. So from the first equation, you can say that the tone will mask the noise in a critical band if the power in the tone is at least 14.5 dB higher than the noise power. Otherwise, if the noise power is higher than this, the noise will mask. So it is evident about equation that the higher critical band power of the tone must be higher in the order of masking for the same noise power. So you can, basically what I'm saying is that, so tone masking the noise, and I increases, I is equal to say 22, that's going to be minus 14.5 plus 22. So you can read that part. So if you could rewrite this one in a simplified manner, this is what we are saying. A tone masking the noise. This is a critical band, one critical band. a diagram, I'm saying that's the tone, that's the noise. This is a symbolic way of thinking. If you say, if the tone is that, and which is 14 plus I dB, it should be higher than that minus 14.5, which is the noise part. If it's not higher, then the tone can't mask the noise. And if you count so similarly, using the above equation, one can see that a tone will be masked. So that's in this case. In this case, a tone will be masked in a noise if it is below the noise power, 5.5 dB below the noise power. If it's below the 5, then the tone will be masked. If it's above, it won't be masked. So you use these two knowledge, and what you do with this afterwards, let's have a look. You use the equation, and then what I have done is I've rewritten the equation, modified the equation for three bands I have. I've modified this equation with a constant, which I have done it. Normally they don't use it, and there are various reasons. And I said, okay, this is my equation for, where is it? Let me hold on a second. Yes, for the critical band 15 to 17, that's the equation. Critical band 0 to 14, that's the equation, which I have modified using a K, right? So now you could say, what is the threshold now? Now, threshold is these two have to be added together. So the noise threshold, overall masking threshold is now TH sub Q, that's already done by Tahr's model, plus either tone masking the noise or noise masking the tone. One or the other can happen. You can have both. Tone is masking the noise or noise is masking the tone. So you put that value in there, add them together, you get your overall masking level. That means overall masking level means this is your component. That's what we are trying to find out, sub Q. And due to all these, what's the masking level? And this will tell you the masking level is somewhere here. That's what you're trying to find. Okay. So you must choose the tone. So we call it the overall masking threshold is called the just noticeable distortion. That's the definition of just noticeable distortion. And I show you another diagram where how I have done this calculation. So remember, how do you do it? You do first simultaneous masking threshold. You calculate the threshold TH sub Q for one particular frequency. Then you calculate a noise masking a tone or tone masking a noise within the critical band, where this is the center frequency, and then add them together. That gives you the overall band. So here is a very basic example. Right. What I did in this case is I used Fourier transform rather than using filters. In the Fourier transform, I found out the power spectrum. Here it is. I just plotted the power spectrum, and that's the frequency scale for me. Then I calculate the masking threshold for each values using the Tahr's model, and that's the blue one. You look for each value. But you know, you can't calculate, if you've got 512 frequency points, you can't calculate masking threshold for each value, because why? Each band, there's a critical band there. So say, for example, I had how many points? 256 point FFT I used. So I would have 128 frequency points. So I've got 128 frequency points. I now have to go and group them. I say, right, that belongs to critical band 1, that belongs to critical band 2, that belongs to critical band 3, that belongs to critical band 4, and so on. I group them. When I've grouped them, then what I do is then I will go and look at within the critical band. I have got many frequency points. Here you go, 1, 2, 3, 4, many. I find out what's the minimum masking threshold I have calculated for that particular frequency, and I just then say, that's my minimum for that band. For the next band, I have already calculated the blue ones and find out which is the minimum value. I said that's the minimum value, and I draw next one, that one. For the next band, I worked out and I found that's the minimum. So I say for next one, that's the minimum. So you can see the green ones are like steps because you have critical bands there, like that. And these are the masking threshold. Do you see that one? So in summary, what I have done, I've taken fast Fourier transform here. In your case, you are not using fast Fourier transform in your mini project. What you are doing is you are finding energy for each band. For every frame, you are going to do masking calculation. So you got energy for each band. So you already got the energy for each band. So you don't need to do the thing minimum what I'm doing. So once you calculate energy each band, you know the center frequency of that band. Now you say, right, this center frequency, how is it going to be masked by all the other frequencies? Calculate using the Tahr method. And that will be either pull up or down. Then find out what's the masking of tone masking and noise masking and tone within that band. Find out that as well. So add that to it, it will go up or down, and you know where the masking threshold. That's what you need. Then move the next critical band, next filter, and calculate the masking threshold. Next one, and you will get this is your masking threshold. What does that tell you? Any frequencies above that you will hear. Any below that you can safely set to 0. You don't normally, but you can set it to minimum small value. So this I am plotting this graph. I did it not using the filters, but using fast Fourier transform. And if you do fast Fourier transform, you get lots of frequency components. So you calculate the masking threshold for each component, and then find out the minimum, group them into critical bands, and find minimum masking threshold in that band is that level. But in a mini project, you don't need to do it. You have already got critical band. Okay, you don't do. So you can do both ways. Here's another example, and I'm just showing you this level. This green is called just noticeable distortion level. So I could now go back and say certain frequencies here, these bands, I don't need. So what I'll do, what you will do in really, once you make this as critical band, you would say, for this critical band, I need to set 0 bits because it's below the masking threshold. So I don't hear that band. The next band is above the masking threshold, so I need 4 bits above masking threshold. So that's the number which you will send. So you can see that in this band, you will send no bits at all to the transmitter. In this band, yes, you will send bits to the transmitter. And say here in this band, no bits are transmitted. When you come to this band, you probably send no bits at all. For 3, there's no energy because the masking threshold is above that. So you can ignore when you come to coding them, you can set that all the bits required for the high frequency 0 for this particular frame. This is frame by frame. So calculate the masking threshold, find out where the levels are, and find out whether you want to allocate bits or not. Now, when you do the next class with Teddy, who will be talking to you about MPEG, and he'll go through this bit allocation table with more in detail. Okay, I have explained simultaneous masking, which is 2 component, frequency component occurring at the same time at the eardrum, and what happens. Now, next one is non-simultaneous masking. Now, this is referred to temporal masking. So this occurs in time as opposed to frequency. So temporal masking occurs when 2 sounds appear within a small interval of time. So for example, here's a signal coming in, and then in time you get another signal coming in. So the question is, would this signal mask this one? Earlier it was in frequency, in different bands, and you say, oh, this one can mask this one, or this one will be masked by all the other ones. Now the other one. This signal coming into the ear now, and after some time another signal arrives at the ear, would the first one mask the second one? That's what we want to look at. So two masking available. One is called pre-masking, one is called post-masking. What are the differences between pre-masking and post-masking? Post-masking is most popular and it has got more effect than the pre-masking. So let's look at both of them. So I've illustrated temporal masking. This is in time, right? And I'm just saying that here is a signal occurring at that time instant, at the ear, at that time instant. And what happened is, then you remove the signal. You hit the signal at a particular bit, like that's kind of a duration of that amplitude, and then you remove the signal then. You will normally think once you're done it, the signal is gone. No, the effect of the signal is decaying effect, like a capacitor charging and discharging. So in time. So what happened, another signal appearing at that point, you won't hear that because it's below that time masking threshold, temporal masking threshold. And next signal appearing here, you won't hear it. If this signal appears above, then you hear it. So this in time, this is time axis. You can see this one has got an effect. Now, whether it will do this or whether it will do this depends on the duration and the amplitude. And we'll come back to that in a minute. So this is called post-masking. What is pre-masking? People are looking at pre-masking. You could say, if you have a signal at that time instant happening now, if that happens, it will mask all the signals before that in time. And that's a bit strange. Like, if you're going to have a signal now, how can it mask the signal before? Like, you know, you can ask the question that. Or you could say that somehow ear does the prediction based on the signals coming in. And the prediction tells that there's a strong signal going to come. That means set up a masking threshold immediately. But you will find the duration of this is about 40 milliseconds as opposed to this one, it's about 200 milliseconds. So post-masking stays longer, whereas pre-masking does not stay that long. So sometimes in audio coding you don't use that. You use all the time that. But the newer model has that as well. Okay? So we mostly concentrate on post-masking for our course. Here is a simultaneous masking. You have got a masking, but we have already dealt with that. We don't need to worry about it. It's not in time. There's two types of temporal masking available. So I have explained to you the post-masker depends on the duration of the masker, and it lasts for 200 milliseconds. That's the normal. So what is post-masking? Post-masking is more important phenomena from the point of view of efficient coding. That is, it results from the gradual release effect of the masker. So masker does not immediately stop. So as soon as you give this one, it does not stop. Its effect is still there. And the mask, after you remove the masker, and its effect still continues. The degree of post-masking depends on decreases from the simultaneous masking as a function of a decay. But let's look at that in the next slide. So you can have a look at here. You can see now the masker. Never mind about that for a moment. The masker, that's the masker duration of 200 milliseconds there, and simultaneous masking here. The masker duration is 5 milliseconds. So the post-masking effect for this millisecond is very little because it's only there for a short while. Whereas if you have got a 200 millisecond masker and remove it, duration is longer and its effect is longer. It takes a long time to decay. So post-masking due to 200 millisecond masker, that's this one, and post-masking due to 5 milliseconds. So depends on the duration, not even the level. The duration determines how long the effect is going to be. These are all in time. Don't forget, signal come now and then and then. At this time instant, that frame, you analyze simultaneous masking. Between frame, you could say, small frames, yeah, you analyze temporal masking. So normally a frame is 20 milliseconds and to do a simultaneous masking, but for temporal masking 20 milliseconds is too long. So what we do is we take the 20 milliseconds, divide them into 5 equal milliseconds, and then we analyze temporal masking for each small frame. Temporal masking model, you need to know temporal masking model. There are many models available, and we have developed quite a few models. Here is a model that we are saying that MF TM, its level will be LTM at a particular time instant. That's the level there. And then it decays, depends on the previous value, and multiplied by coefficients. It's like a discharging curve, like C node is exponential. This is basically a capacitor discharging curve, if you think of it like that way. The amount of temporal masking, TM1, is then chosen as the average MF for each frame of the calculation. So if you do small frame for 20 millisecond frame, small frames, and do this calculation, and you can take the average of that as the temporal masking for that 20 milliseconds. And you probably want to know what is this decay value, the tau here, this one, for different frequency, center frequency. That will be different because it's just decay can happen. So what happens is that you got a band pass filter here, right? If you go along the band pass filter, it's simultaneous masking. If you take one band pass filter, go in time, that's temporal masking will occur. So simultaneous masking across the bands and temporal masking for each filter in time. You see that? So you need to calculate. So tau m is given by this equation. Tau m equal tau minimum is given to you. SCM is the central frequency of the band, and you calculate tau m. From that, you can calculate the masking threshold. So there is a temporal masking model 2 available by Gestat. He actually did psychoacoustic experiment, and he came up with this model, this value. And this is the masking. It's calculated by one constant A, B, and this is actually the duration and the level and all of those. And you don't really need to know the formula. You'll be given, but A, B, C are calculated using his experiments psychoacoustic curves, and you can find out the temporal masking level this way as well, right? That's another technique. Once you have calculated temporal masking model, level and simultaneous masking level, what do you do? So as I said to you, what you do, this is your filter, 1, 2, 3, for example. Your signal comes in, you find energy, E1, E2, E3, and you calculate, you will then calculate simultaneous masking that way, that's frequency axis. You take one filter, this filter output, and then work out in time. That means this way, and its amplitude or energy, and then you work out the simultaneous masking threshold. You have simultaneous masking, temporal masking threshold. Temporal masking threshold, you got a simultaneous masking threshold, and you can then combine them to get the overall masking threshold. So we have found out a way of combining it. Temporal masking, once you calculate simultaneous masking, we add them together using a power law, and we have found that by choosing P equal to 5, we get a better masking. So it's very hard to know which P to use. People have used various values for various applications, and that's how you do calculate the masking. So you started with if you summarize it carefully, think it as bandpass filters of your project, and you calculate for each frame energy for each filter, and from that energy you calculate masking threshold for each filter, and that's your simultaneous masking threshold for each filter. Now, you take one filter output, that's the time output, and you group them into small frame, and energy for 5 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds for each frame for one filter, and calculate the temporal masking threshold. And then you combine simultaneous and temporal together. Using this formula, you get overall masking threshold. Now, using the overall masking threshold, you can say above the overall masking threshold, we will hear that band. If it's below, we won't hear that band. And using that principle, you apply your technique, your coding principle. So far, I have explained to you basic introduction to inner ear, then auditory masking, principle of auditory masking, then how to calculate simultaneous masking threshold and temporal masking threshold, and how to combine them. Now, knowing this knowledge, then you have to learn wideband audio coding, and where you will be using this masking threshold to actually allocate bits for transmission or compression. Okay, that's your next section, which is wideband audio coding. That's your last section of this course. This takes two parts. One is a CD, which I will be giving, and then it's a live lecture by Teddy, who will be giving you the insight to MPEG compression, and bit allocation, which is the secret of MPEG. Okay, so I will introduce the wideband audio coding today. Okay, we come to chapter 14, week 14, which is wideband audio coding, and let's look at how we do audio coding. There's two aspects I want to look through. One is wavelet packet-based audio coding. Other one is the MPEG audio coding compression technique. I will touch upon the wavelet-based one first, and then MPEG will be done by Teddy for you on week 13. Okay. So, why do you want to do coding? Right, reduction of bitrate requirement for high-quality audio has been an attractive proposition for some time, mainly for storage and digital broadcasting. You want to compress and send the data across, and then you receive them. Right. So, a number of audio compression algorithms exist, but among them, the most popular one is the MPEG. Well, what you call it MP3. That's your most popular one, which uses modified discrete cosine transform method and provides high quality audio at 64 kilobits per second. So you will learn about MPEG 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 21. There are many MPEG, and the famous ones are initially started as MPEG 1, MPEG layer 1, and MPEG 2 is not there. Then MPEG 3, I think MP3 is layer 3 of MPEG, and then 7 is the next one, and also 4 is advanced audio coding technique, which gives you, MPEG 4 gives you the 64 kilobits per second, which uses a noise shaping technique. MP3 uses temporal masking and simultaneous masking. MP3, you know the MP3 players you have, which has got temporal masking, simultaneous masking, and they normally give you about 128 kilobits per second. And if you go for MP4, which can go 64 with a very high quality. So wideband audio coding, how do you do wideband audio coding? Basically, you've got music signal of 44.1 kilobits per second and 6 kilohertz, 16-bit sample, so it's about 1.4 megabits per second. Transmitting that across is very, very difficult because too much of data and to transmit across. So we want to find the way of reducing the data. Compression means decreasing the amount of data, but without losing the perceptual quality. Similar to pitch coding, remember? We went from 64 kilobits to 32 to 16 to 8 to 4 kilobits per second. The quality is still same. So there's a lot of redundancy in the signal. We want to remove them. In audio coding, you use the model of the ear for coding. For speech coding, you use the vocal tract apparatus modeling. That is basically how the vocal apparatus, you model that. So it's called kind of a source coder. You use them for speech coding. If you use a transform coder, this is called transform coder, the ear. If you model the ear and use for speech, you won't get good compression. Compression has to be for speech from the vocal tract, help coding, which is based on the vocal tract model. For music, you use the ear model, okay? Right. So there are many applications, as I said. Let's look at audio coding in a minute. So low bitrate coding can introduce distortion, and when you decode it, it will become unacceptable if it's distorted. What we want to do is we want to have low bitrate wideband coding, but we should make sure that we use psychoacoustic model to make sure that only certain part of the spectrum is suppressed, in the sense that if it is below Markov threshold, you suppress them, all the other parts are retained. By doing that, we can actually reduce the number of bit rate. So at the end, what happens is, if you use MPEG, all it does is, if you take a music signal, these are the samples, they are 16 bits actually. And before you understand thoroughly, you could say, what are we trying to do? What we are basically trying to do is, current techniques allows you to compress a 16-bit signal into 2 bits per sample. So you're going 16 bits to about 2 bits per second. MPEG does that very, very cleverly. But what we want to do, not 2, we think there's more redundancy left. We want to go for 1 bit per sample. But that's on average. That means some samples are set to 0 below Markov threshold. Some are given a couple of bits. Some are given more bits. So the thing is that our aim at the end of the day is, can we actually represent a 16-bit data into 1 bit using this Markov threshold on average? That means some bits will be 0, some will be 3 bits, some will be 8 bits. So on average, can we have 1 bit per sample? That's what we are after. At the moment, we can achieve 2 or slightly lower than 2. So we use masking as the major thing in order to do this compression. So how does the impact layer 1 work? Basically, it's simple. I'll run through this. So they have got altogether 32 filters. They're equal band there. They're not actually bar scale. So they are equal bandwidth. No, they are on bar scale, but they're equal bandwidth filters. Are they equal? No, sorry. On impact, well, Terry will go through them. I think they're equal bandwidth filters, right? And they use polyphase filter bank, which you have done, probably in signal processing, to implement them. And then they use FFT to calculate the masking threshold. You could ask, why can't they use masking threshold from the filter bank? Because the filter banks are not actually different bandwidth, like a critical bandwidth. You can't use those filter banks. So that's one of the deficiencies on the impact. If you could have done it differently, it'd be good. So the way it works is this, just a basic block diagram of impact. Here is the filter bank. They are equal bandwidth filter banks. Here, the signal goes there. Now you take the signal and take in FFT. You get all these frequency component amplitude, and you apply Tahr's model. Don't need to be Tahr, that's the simplest model. There are other models for simultaneous masking. So you find out the masking threshold. Once you know the masking threshold, you calculate what's the signal to mask ratio, how many samples are above this, below, and then you allocate bits accordingly, and then you requantize them, which we will look at later on, and then you send the channel. So really the thing is that this is not required, this path, if you can calculate mask and threshold here. But because of their equal bandwidth, you can't do it there. You must have this channel to provide that. But we can show that instead of doing this way, if you use wavelet packet decomposition, which I have already done under the time frequency resolution chapter, I've already done that. If you use that, we can actually eliminate FFTs, because we can decompose wavelet packet decomposition such as it's got a bandwidth of critical bandwidth filters, and then we can calculate the masking threshold as part of it. So this is replaced by wavelet packet decomposition, then you don't need this section. So wideband audio coding has to be done in two ways. One is you do in time domain, other one is called frequency domain, and frequency domain is what we are after at the moment. Frequency domain coders are designed to identify and remove redundancy in the frequency domain. That's what it is. And a common feature of all the frequency domain coders is time frequency transform, which maps the non-stationary signal onto a time frequency plane. That's what. So time frequency representation, which we're going to do in a minute, if you don't understand, we will follow it. I'll explain that further in. It will remove perceptually unwanted data. So the subband samples, because we are going to divide them into bands, that's called subband samples, we can quantize them with the minimum resolution that's necessary so that you don't perceptually hear any distortion. We quantize the value. So if I have value of that level, if my masking is there, I could say I only need 3 bits above the masking threshold to actually transmit the data. So you must send the masking threshold as well if you want to do it that way, okay? So there are powerful algorithms available, but the one that we will be looking at is a different algorithm, which is wavelet packet-based algorithm in a minute, okay? So wideband speech covers between 50 to 7 kilohertz, and wideband audio covers between 10 to 20 kilohertz. So we want to come up with the one particular front end where we can tap one bandwidth for speech, one for audio. You can do that as well. But as I said to you, if you are going to use transform coders like this for speech, it won't give you the best compression. But you just want to do compression. That's okay for with one. So, but you must remember, in audio coding or just wideband audio coding we take, there's no compression algorithm which compress speech and music at the minimum rate, bitrate compression now. If you want to have a really low bitrate compression, you go for KELP coding for speech and MPEG coding or wavelet packet coding for audio. There should be 2 separate coders. You can't have single coder giving the minimum bitrate. Can't. So just to give you a background of audio coding, and then you can see the audio coding standards. And I haven't written all the other standards, but it started at some stage, and ADP-CM, that's the CCITT standard 721, 32 kilobits per second, and you can different type of audio coding algorithms available, and you can see all of them. At MPEG gives you in that region of 32 to 192, but normally we operate at 128. MPEG 4 will give you 64 kilobits per second. And wideband speech and audio coding techniques, there are many techniques available, and these are the symbols I have used previously, so for you to know. What we are after is wavelet packet-based. This chapter is going to concentrate on wavelet packet-based audio coding, and MPEG will be covered separately. How do you do for wavelet packet-based coding? So what we are going to do is the wavelet packet decomposition as an effective tool for data compression and a high-quality, low-complexity, scalable radio. What does scalability mean? Scalability means you send 4 kilohertz based compression data first. That's the low quality. And you can add on from 4 to 8 also, send separately. At the receiver, you can combine them together to get high quality. So you can, depends on the bandwidth that you have paid for, you will get either low quality or high quality. But we don't want another coder to provide the high quality, one coder to provide the low quality. We want one coder have low quality as well as high quality. The high quality means the bandwidth is just added to the low quality. So the wavelet packet-based code, I'll show you in a minute, does this very nicely. That means you can design the whole thing for wideband, and then if the bandwidth is restricted, you only send the low band. And then you send the high band as well separately if you want, and combine them at the receiver end. That's possible as well. So the wavelet packet-based code allows you to have multiple sampling rate, 44, 32, 22, and so on. An example of a 24-band, that is a critical band wavelet packet representation at 16 kilohertz sampling. I'm using 16 kilohertz sampling, not 44. Is shown here in a minute. So the subband bandwidth and the center frequency closely approximate critical band. So let's see the next diagram that we have. Okay, here we go. You have already done wavelet packet. Here's your start. Your sampling is at 16 kilohertz, 8 kilohertz bandwidth. You have the low pass and a high pass. Then low pass and a high pass, and every one of them has to be subsampled. And you stop at the place that you want, and you look at the bandwidth here, this one, this one, this one. They all roughly follow critical bandwidth. So this is based on how the US bandwidth is. So wavelet packet gives you this kind of a decomposition, and you've got all the different levels, one of the problem you're going to find is, if you're transmitting this across to the receiver, you should send that first, and then that, then that, then that, then that. There's a delay there because you can't send all of them together, because in wavelet packet, these have to be reconstructed first, added to this, and added to that. So they have to arrive at a different time. So there's a time delay problem. But you can see very clearly, you do the coding of it, and if you only have a channel, only 4 kilohertz bandwidth, you only have to send that much. And you decide later on, that you want to send the high quality one, you then send this bit. So it depends on the bandwidth. If it has got a higher bandwidth, you send the whole lot to the receiver. This is the transmitter part. Or if you've got a low band, that's called the scalability. Scalability means you send different bands, and then you are able to combine them easily at the end. How do you combine them? You combine this first, and then you do that, add them all together, you get your signal back. One of the things in wavelet packet decomposition just you have to be careful is that because of your downsampling, you can see people make mistakes. I'm now writing all the bands. 1, 2, 3. This is the lower band, that's the higher band. After one decomposition. Now you're going to subsample, downsample by 2. When you do that, the spectrum you will find will flip. So the 16 comes here, 15 here, 14 here, 13 here, and the 9 that you had ends up here. And here, no, nothing happened because I haven't low part subsampled, that's okay. Whenever you subsample the high part, now you take this and this at the next level, and you downsample. This is low pass, no problem. High pass, what will happen is, when you downsample this, what happens? 8 will appear here, 5 will appear here. So the spectrum split. It just flips around. In here, this one will remain same, but this one flips around. Here, look at, this is the high one. Every time you take the high pass output and downsample, the spectrum splits around. So when you come to level 3, you can see the filter band, first one would have correct output, second filter band would have correct, third one has got the output belongs to the fourth one, and the fourth one has got the output belongs to the third one, and the ninth filter has the output belong to the 16th one. So if you are trying to look at frequencies, what you want to do is you want to reorder the spectra so that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? You just have to do that in wavelet packet decomposition. This spectral splitting occurs every time you take a high band signal and downsample. that will flip, and so on, so on, so on. Okay. So the next diagram displays the bandwidth and critical band of the filters. You can see here, next diagram. This is the true critical band. True critical band is the red one, and the wavelet packet gives approximates the critical band nicely. So you can see that very nicely. So wavelet packet decomposition is you can use them for audio coding, which approximate the ear's critical bandwidth. So which is much better for masking level calculation. In MPEG, they are equal bandwidth, therefore you have to calculate masking separately using FFT. Here we can integrate everything. So what's the code structure we are going to use in the wavelet packet? We are going to use 16 kilohertz. It's an example only, 16 kilohertz. I'm going to do 6-level decomposition. So 6 level means 2 to the power 6, which is 64 wavelet packet decomposition band you are going to get. Then you are going to apply psychoacoustic model, and you're going to set certain band bits as 0, and then you're going to send across after quantization, and then you're going to reconstruct. So simple example is this here. This is my, instead of MPEG, I have got these. I got 256 audio sample. I can take a frame and I do 64 band decomposition and take the output of each filter and do auditory masking model, and then from that I know how many bits I have to allocate, and then I take this signal coming in and set the masking threshold and then work out how many bits and then send them across. So bit allocation is important to know. That is, what is bit allocation? 16-bit a sample. Masking threshold shows you don't need because it's below, so you can chop these away. Only that much you have to send. If the masking threshold, if that's the 16-bit, masking is above, then you send 0 bits. It's masking that sample. So the maximum signal energy and the masking source of each band is calculated. So we find out the energy here, energy here, energy here, energy here, energy here. Apply to the masking threshold Tahr's model. You get the global masking threshold. Using that, find out how many bits you need for each band. Then the samples are scaled and quantized according to the subband number of bits. Wavelet function. Now, I think we have looked at this before. Wavelet function has got a quadrature mirror filter. We used them. That one and that one. We have used them previously, and I'll run through this very fast. And we use this quadrature mirror filters to downsample all the way through. And the filter characteristics are like this. Again, we have looked at this before. And you only design one filter, and every time you downsample, you use the same filter again and again. And this is not really band pass, it's called high pass. Yeah, but this is all very simple about the filter itself, okay? Implementation of an auditory masking model. We have to implement auditory masking model now. So, what do we do? So, what have we got to do here? Masking is the process where a number of least significant bits are removed from the binary representation. That means all you're saying is that's your amplitude, positive amplitude, masking level says that's where the level is, so you can remove these bits. That's what it's saying. Identifying the least significant bits that can safely be removed from the subband sample is a difficult task. However, it is possible to identify the imperceptible least significant bit. That means these bits are below the masking threshold. We can remove them. So auditory model is used here to determine the noise masking properties of the subband signal. How do you implement them? Right. We can use various models and various things. We have using a model by Black, which is an impact model for auditory masking. You can use Tahr's model, which won't give the optimum compression, but it's still good enough for you. For your mini project, it's good enough. These are the steps involved in calculating masking threshold. What are the steps? Calculate the maximum power. Find out in each critical band the number of coefficients coming out of wavelet packet. Square them up and add them up. You get a maximum. You get energy. Or you can square each wavelet packet output, each wavelet coefficient in each band, and find out what's the maximum out of that. So what I did is I take the first coefficient of wavelet packet in one band, square them, second, third, fourth, and so on, and I pick up the maximum of that. That gives me the energy for that particular band. It's also possible to use power per critical band as well, which I have done it. And then, I mean, this is easier. Once you are done, then I calculate the center frequency of each band. What are the center frequency of each band? Well, I calculate that. Once I've calculated, I now apply, I know the energy in each critical band of this wavelet decomposition. I now calculate the masking threshold. I need to use a masking model. I use one of the model and calculate the masking threshold. Once you have done that, I calculate the value of self-masking. This is your intra-band masking. Remember intra-band? A signal within a critical band can mask another signal within that band. You know ET is equal to minus 14.5 plus I, and EN is equal to 5.5. I did that earlier. And then you add them together, you get the total masking component. So in this case, in this diagram, I am showing a musical signal here, and I took and these are the energy. These are the power energy of the signal summation of. Well, it's not an individual value. It's not an average value. It's just an energy in that band, or basically we can say power in the band. And you are then calculating the masking threshold. You can see the masking threshold that you calculate for this particular band is all below the energy. So you must send all of these. Masking is useless here because masking threshold is below. So you can, it's not good for us in this particular frame. So we can't compromise in this particular frame. In some frame it will be above. So if the masking threshold is here, then you can get rid of that. And you only have to send that bit. So bit allocation, how do you allocate bits? Now that's the important part. How do we allocate bits? Bit allocation, what you do is you find the global masking threshold and then calculate bit allocation per band. Every band you have to determine. So how do we do that? Let's look at the next diagram and I'll show you how to do it. Take this as an example. For one particular example, this is my actual signal in that particular critical band, and that's my level, signal to noise ratio. I can calculate for that very easily. What I want to know, this signal, this one, this line A, how much is above this or below? So I can say the noise masking ratio, which I want to calculate, noise masking ratio equal to signal to noise ratio minus signal to mask ratio. That's the signal, that's the masking level. At that point, this goes down. At that point, masking level. So I say signal to noise ratio minus signal to mask ratio is my noise masking ratio. Because I'm saying this is my noise level for M bit, this is for M minus bit, this is for M plus bit. So minimum masking threshold is at here. So I want to know what is this ratio. If this is above, it's much better. If it's below, you have to send more bits. Sorry, beg your pardon. I have to move backwards. Okay. So I'm saying noise masking ratio at one particular level is equal to signal to noise minus signal to mask ratio. This is for one band I'm calculating. Next band. So you have to calculate for all the bands. Okay. Once you have calculated for all the bands, now what you're going to say is Firstly, the number of bits per sub-band is set to 0. You set the number of bits per sub-band 0 first. You don't know anything about how many bits you want to set. Set it to 0 first. Then, and the signal-to-mass ratio for each band you calculate it. The signal power minus auditory masking threshold. That's called the signal-to-mass ratio. You can calculate. You know, SNR you can calculate for each band very easily. That 6.02 times B minus 72 is the signal-to-noise ratio. So you can set that to, if you have one bit you're going to allocate, that's the signal-to-noise ratio. So what you do is, you say NMR is equal to SMR minus SNR. So you make sure SNR is 0 first, B equal to 0, and NMR equal to NMR. Now you increase this bit by 1, so this will cast a value. So this minus this, till it's positive. You increase next value until they become equal. Once it's equal, you have reached the correct masking level. So you know then read the number of bits. That's the number of bits for each band. If the NMR for a band is greater than 0, NMR is greater than 0, then the number of bits allocated to the band is increased by 1. So you increase them by 1 until SMR minus NMR equal to 0, or SMR is slightly lower than SNR. So you keep increasing the number of bits. As you increase the number of bits, this increases and that increases. Initially you start with the 0 and increases. So you know every time it increases, you know how many bits you need. At one point, when you do it, this minus this equal to 0, or it become negative. You stop, and that's the number of bits you need to send. If you go back and look at your diagram, you will see, oh yes, what I'm trying to find out is, I find out SNR, I don't know, I start with the bit 1, bit 2, bit 3, bit 4, bit 5. I just keep calculating it. I'm taking that level, and I'm finding how many bits I need. So I just make this one. So that minus that is 0 means I know how many bits I need above the masking threshold. And if you want to look at that in a block diagram, this is the way you do it. You find out, you get your signal, you find out your auditory masking threshold, you find out SMR is sound pressure level minus that. Sound pressure level is your actual level. Then you set the number of bits to 0. Now you calculate signal-to-noise ratio. You calculate this one and say, is it greater than 0? Yes. Add extra bits. Recalculate. Keep doing. Is it less than 0? Yes, it's less than 0. Then you come and stop. And that's for one band. Next band, next band, next band, next band. Every band would have a masking threshold, noise masking ratio. And you know how many bits you want there. You know these are the number of bits required per band. You will find for a higher band, it might be 0. For a lower band, it could be 3 bits, right? So that's why you are calculating it. Once you are done, the bit allocation, but then the subband, for the allocation of constrained number of bits, SMR for each band is again calculated, and initial number of bits per second is set to 0. Then the subband with the highest NMR is found and extra bit allocated for that band. This search allocated procedure repeated until the total number of bits are allocated. Right. Okay. What happened here is, previous one, what I said is, you don't have a control on number of bits. You're saying, what's the bits required for band 1? What's the bits required for band 2? What's band 3? And then you calculate, you know how many bits for all the band for that particular frame. Now somebody would say to you, no, we don't want that. We want a fixed number of bits per that frame. So what do? You can't allocate bits for each band. So you start with the first one and say allocate the number of bits required, first band. You don't know which band. You calculate all these bands and you say whichever the one has the highest energy, allocate the most number of bits for that first. And the next one, and the next one, and the next one. When you have used all the bits, you stop. I don't know whether you understand that. That's called fixed bit rate. Again, in impact, you will learn it. In this case, it's not a fixed bit rate. What I did is, you calculate the number of bits required for band 1, band 2, band. If you go fixed bit rate, the quality is slightly down sometimes, okay? So, the method I have shown is initially was normal one. This one, now next one is going for fixed bit rate, I think. Here, constrained bit rates. That means we go for all the bands 0, you find subband K with the highest NMR. That's all you have to do. Increase the bit and keep going, do it. Have I allocated all the bits? You have been told per frame only 100 bits. Have I allocated all the bits? If I have allocated all the bits, that means so this is 1 band, 2 band, 3 band, 4 band. You allocated with the highest energy, so that band allocated, this band allocated, this band allocated, and you have finished the bits. So these two are not allocated then. You will find most of the voice sound low frequency bands are used for the highest and unvoiced sound high frequency bands are used. So you will find in the fixed bit rate, you can only allocate so many bits for so many filters. Some filters have got no bits allocated. So the quality is slightly down on fixed bit rates. So scaling and quantization. So what I've done so far, I've told you how to do that, and then I told you how to allocate the bits. You've done that. Once you know the bits, now you have to quantize them, because you are told only 3 bits are required for this particular band. So what do I do? How do I quantize them? Couple of ways of doing it. There's one quantization technique called block compounding. Have a look at here, block compounding technique. What does that mean? Number of bits required to encode a subband block samples can be reduced by removing redundant most significant bits. So if you don't, that's called the block compounding. Look at the next diagram, shows you. This is the quantization. For this discrepant block compounding, an assumption will be made that the samples in signal question are all positive. So we say all the signals are positive. That may not be the case. If the signal has been digitized using a uniform analog to digital quantization, then the levels are 2 to the b. All right? So we will start with the next diagram. Shows you how to do the block compounding. I'm just looking for the diagram. You can read through them. Here's the diagram. Next one. Here, look. This is your block compounding. What happened is here is this is your first sample, second sample, and so on, so on. You have found out you do need 3 bits for that, and so many bits for that, so many bits for that. But really, what in block compounding, what you do is you find if you've got a leading zeros in a particular sample, you can safely take them out. But you need to keep it positive or negative. So you don't need all these number of bits like, unwanted. So if the highest position of the leading is 1 is the bit, M in the block, then we can discard bits M plus 1 to B before storage. So if it is 1, I can discard all these before storing it. Otherwise, this will take a position, okay? So if you've got M bit, 16 bits, and you can, if this is the leading bit is 1, then you can discard that. As you can see, the most significant bits that are shaded dark are all zeros, so it can be discarded. All I'm saying, these are all zeros, you can discard them. However, due to the position of the leading 1 in sample 2, M bits are required for each sample in the block. So for example, if you go back, if you've got a leading 1 here, hold on, what am I saying? So if you come here, if you have a look, say this was your masking threshold at that point. That tells you can get rid of all these bits. And this was, all these are zeros you had, and you can get rid of that. So all you need to transmit in the block compounding is only K to M bits. But you need to have a side information of that level. So that at the receiver, by knowing that position, you can set this to 0, put your actual bits, and put that to 0. You get to 16 bits. That's block compounding. It's the simplest way of doing block compounding. And when Terry goes through, he'll go through another type of technique as well, and which shows you how do you do the quantization. I am not explaining the quantization part clearly here because it's in the next section. Whereas my main thrust here to how to calculate the number of bits required for each band. That's what the main thrust in this slide is. Okay, not the quantization part, even though I've explained a basic quantization techniques. So we have implemented in MATLAB, and we found out transparent coding is possible on average 3 to 4 bits per sample with the unconstrained bit rates. So we have done that, and it's a scalable audio coder. We can go further down from 3 to 4 bits to 2 bits by using temporal masking, which I haven't explained here. By using temporal masking, we can go further down. And this one actually using only simultaneous masking, not temporal masking. So if you use temporal masking, you will go to 2 bits per second, 2 bits per sample. And that basically is your wavelet packet-based audio coder, this one. This is your wavelet packet audio coder. Scalability, remember, what is scalability? That scalability means that the audio coder, encoder, gives you different bands, all coded nicely, but you can send one group of bands first, and you can construct the signal, and then you decide you want a high frequency band. You can then send the signal as well. You don't need to recode anything. Just send the high band separately as a receiver. You combine them nicely, and the decoder, all you do is what this signal is wavelet packet. Think as a wavelet packet. Whatever comes, you've been decoded. Whatever the high frequency comes, then you decode them, and wavelet packet nicely combine them at the end to get your signal. So, in summary, what I have done in this chapter, think about what I've done in this chapter, wideband coding. I've introduced you MPEG, and then I've introduced the wavelet packet decomposition. And in wavelet packet decomposition, I have done it such as the critical band wavelet packet decomposition. And then I'm calculating masking threshold in each band. Then I'm using the masking threshold to calculate how many bits are required in each band. Then I'm using block compounding technique to remove unwanted bits. And that's how I reduce the bit rate. In this technique, we found you need something like 3 bits per sample, which is not good. You want to go below that. If you add temporal masking to this model, you'll get 2 bits. If you go down further, you need to do further. Further means you need to really have accurate auditory masking models. These models are not very accurate. They are pretty good, but if you want to go 1 bit per sample, then you need to have a very accurate model. Very, very hard to model them, auditory masking model. To get a very accurate auditory masking model is not easy. Okay, that's all my CD presentations. I've done 4 CDs, so 5 CDs for you. I can't remember how you can. But I want you to let me know your feedback on these CDs, and sometimes some CDs I'm rushing and doing it. These CDs are produced without any preparation, just as I go along, as though I'm in a lecture. So I like to hear the feedback from you, and whether you feel that one-to-one lecture or CD or combination of they are good. Maybe at week 14 we'll do an evaluation, and I really want your honest opinion of this so that we can implement this for future. Any suggestion that you want to give with this use of CD, you are most welcome. You can always email me as well, but I will do an evaluation in week 14. Okay, thanks very much, and I won't be seeing you on week 13, but I'll see you on week 14 and to run through the exam format. And also any questions you have over the week 14 that we have done, you can ask me on week 14. Okay? All right then. See you then. Bye-bye then. Thank you. And make sure that